What's the deal, YouTube? What's the deal, man? How's it going? So I'm gonna be doing a review on uh on this movie that I just saw about Brian Jones. Brian Jones, for those of you who don't know, was basically the original member of the Rolling Stones. He uh, he started the band and was the first leader and probably the most talented member of the Rolling Stones, which is a very, I mean, when you look at a lot of these rock bands, especially the ones that are like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, there's a lot more to them than just five guys that that hung out in a garage and made music and got famous. There's a hell of a lot more to it, especially when it goes to these English bands like the Beatles and the Stones and so forth back in that time, in the 60s, early 60s. The birth of rock and roll and rhythm and blues, and the British invasion. It was called the British invasion for a reason, because, yeah, it was English culture being invading America. And what I mean by that, I'm talking like MI6 type shit. This is all, a lot of these bands, when you go back to their managers and like the bloodlines, even the bloodlines of some of the members and the managers and the players and the people involved with creating their dogma. A lot of these people are like blue-blooded people in positions of power, right? Like, so this guy Brian Jones was the original member of the Rolling Stones, which is the greatest rock and roll band in the world. No ifs, ands, or doubts, or whatever about it. I mean, sure, this band's better, but in all truth, the Rolling Stones are the greatest rock and roll band ever. I mean, they've done the most. Just whatever. Just they're the best. Not necessarily the best music, but they're just the greatest rock and roll band. Just fuck. That is a non-fucking argument. I do not care who you are. That's facts. But they're one of the most nefarious too. I mean, the whole bad boy image and everything was like the Hegelian dialect, the two hands of each coin. I mean, they're very Freemasonic. So Brian Jones is the leader of this band. He was like the musical genius. He was the original thought and creator of this entity, the Rolling Stones, right? And this is what seems to happen with this Illuminati shit and whatever, is they get these people and then they just take them down and replace them. You see, like the Rolling Stones have influenced millions and millions of fucking kids and myself, like, for fuck's sakes, man. I swear to God, if it wasn't for the Rolling Stones, I probably wouldn't look the way I do, and I'd probably be working in an office somewhere or some shit. Like, I'm not even kidding you. I mean, the Rolling Stones are Her Satanic Majesty's request. I mean, that shit's fact. It's all real. And so what I'm kind of trying to get at, my point, is Brian Jones died at 27. That's a ritualistic age, okay? And the Rolling Stones are a ritualistic Masonic band. And what I seem to think, okay, there was a dispute between Brian Jones getting fired from the band and not being capable. Well, he wasn't doing street drugs really at this point. he had a doctor that was coming in and prescribing him all kinds of prescription drugs. They didn't really mention exactly what they are, but anyone knows that prescription drugs are just as dangerous, or if not more dangerous, than street drugs. And so here is the genius of this entity, the Rolling Stones. It's just going to be used as a media empire in the future, right? And that's where I'm breaking down to this, like, the MI6 type stuff, right? Like, they see this shit ahead of time. So this guy, and also he was getting paid more than Mick and Keith. He definitely was, and he did start the band. So he was getting impaired by all these drugs that doctors were giving him and so forth. He had more money when he quit the band. Klein, the manager of the Rolling Stones, which everyone seems to think ripped off the Rolling Stones, you know, this guy Klein, Alan Klein, or whatever his name is. Well, put it this way, maybe it was a payoff, because he had something to do with these builders and being at the Brian Jones house, and there's all kinds of evidence that it wasn't just a drowning, that there was a lot more to it. Some lady that actually knew and saw what happened, that went around saying some shit, stayed at Bill Wyman's house. Her name was June or something, I think. Anyways, she got beat to death. There's a lot more to it. And, you know, people say, oh, well, Klein ripped off the Stones or whatever, but who's to say that maybe Mick and Keith didn't make a back deal with him to say, listen, you know, whatever, get us right, so we're now the captain of this ship, and, you know, you can have 10 more years or whatever. Because right after Brian Jones died, they did the Hyde Park memorial for him, which is just a fucking sham. I mean, as much as I love Mick Jagger, he's a fucking piece of shit. Just for sure. I mean, you're not the fucking richest rock star in the world without being a ruthless fucking bastard. And that's what these guys are, man. But I just, you know, and still, like, just from my youth and everything, I fucking love the Rolling Stones music. But I know how what was done to create that music. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know about rituals. I know about magic spells. I know about stuff like that. And it's all in our music. And it started from way, way back. So, anyways, it's a pretty interesting little show, so check it out. It was on Netflix. I think it was called Stoned or something. Anyways, not bad. Do it.